All right, you better buckle up. We've got a lot to get through on this one. Starting off with output flanges, the rear. We see 6 brand new nuts and bolts all ready for when the time comes that we reinstall our handbrake drum. And they're retained by this plate, like such. All right, prop shaft bolts. I've got a whole lot of new ones, but they have problems because the originals have a much lower profile on the head than the new ones. And you can see as they slot in the back, they are retained by a circlip that sits in there. So that extra height causes issues. They're also a little stumpy for these chunky new nylock nuts I want to install. So I don't think I'm going to use them. Unable to find the right length of nut, I went to custom. I bought myself a slightly longer ones than I needed to. And then, as we prepared to cut, there was no precision. We just eyeballed it. Then we put it in the vise, got out the grinder, and hacked the tip off. Now it does have a little bit of writing on the back there, on the head, and that will make it stand a little proud, so we ground that down. And now I'm hoping they're going to be just right to slot in the back, and hopefully, our circlip will go on. Oh, gee whiz. All right, and then we have a dust cap. There we go. Well, the old mud catcher. It looks a little warped, but it's done 60 years of service and it's going in for another 60, so I think it's going to be okay if it lacks a little symmetry. I certainly do, and I'm younger than it is. All right, you can see how rough it is where the oil seal's going to run, so that kind of makes this item unserviceable, and it's quite expensive to replace. I was concerned about having to do a trip down to the docks, but I was cruising around Pangolin 4x4's website and I come across something I've never heard of before called a speedy sleeve. So how this works is you have your sleeve, you have a little tool, you pop it on here, that on there, and give it a whack. So you can see where the oil seal is going to be running, and our sleeve needs to get down to about that point there, but our tool isn't quite going to get us all the way. But I think, hoping, this Schedule 80 PVC pipe might be able to do the job. Don't freak out too much with the sandpaper. It's only a light scuff just to get rid of any burring and nastiness. This thing has to be as clean as possible. And give it a blast with some brake cleaner. Then we let that dry. We're going to analyse our speedy sleeve. So if we get in there nice and close, you can see that it has like a little, is it a perforation? Would that be the thing? Like something that's not cut but almost cut? Like the old sardine cans with a key. Then again, I think most of us who can remember those are probably dead of old age. Well, I don't know. What we have to do, I think we have to snip it first so that we can peel it back like a sardine can. Oh, this is a one-off trick. If I get this wrong, I'm buying a new one. They're about 50 bucks. Okay, let me put on my more powerful glasses. I'm quite, I noticed a correlation actually between the quality of my work and how well I can see what I'm doing. Okay, all right, let's give it a snip. Pop that there. No heat or anything like that. Put the tool there. Grab the hammer. Come down that little bit further. That's where we need to be. Alright, this is the tricky bit where we've got to get off that that bottom bit. Hopefully we get this right. Well, that's either going to work or it won't. Before we can install it onto the back of the transfer case, we need to sort out the backing plate for the transmission brake that's going to live here, right there. But we can see that we've already gone ahead and cleaned up and disassembled these components, and unfortunately there's a lot of jobs that go on behind the scenes that just don't get filmed. And that is a problem in the way that it makes it harder to tell the story, and to actually go back and see what I've done, you need to go back and see what I've done, which is an impossibility. However, inspired by Doctor Who's TARDIS, I've invented my own time-travelling machine, so we can dance between chapters of this journey. But unlike the Doctor's TARDIS disguised as a British police box, mine's cunningly disguised as a porta potty, because nobody wants to go inside a porta potty.
Alright, we are preparing thrusters for the time-space continuum. Got to evacuate the gases from the main chamber and flush auxiliary motors.
I'm good. You know the way around. Just head on in there. I'll catch up with you later. We need to assess the handbrake or the transmission brake, which I initially said was all seized up and buggered, and I believe it was. However, my method of testing was incorrect. You don't just lever down on this thing like a baboon. What you do is the mechanisms pull the linkages backwards. Well, if we take away the housing and have a look inside, we've got a couple of plungers, 2 rollers and a conical cone. Let's put it all back together. Now if we pull on it, the rollers roll up and out, pushing out the plungers and expanding your brake shoes. And then everything gets reset with a complicated myriad of springs. So this is our expander housing with plungers in it, and this is our adjustment housing with plungers in it, but we're going to start off here first. Oh, there we go. Try and keep them in place. Now we have everything stripped apart, we need to examine the components, clean things up, see what extra stuff we might need. So we're going to do one of those things that the movies used to have midway, where it stops and you go off and get your popcorn and so forth, and we'll be back. Well, that intermission lasted about a year, so you should be well rested. Just to remind ourselves, our backing plate is going to sit here, so kind of sideways, I suppose. We'll have our adjuster housing there, our expander housing here, and the notch in the brakes on that side is going to sit there, and the blade is going to sit there. So we'll have them this way and that. Starting with our thingamajig, I've recycled that pin and also the spring clip here. There is a dust cover to go on, but it's going to obscure what we need to check out. The housing doesn't really have a top or a bottom or a left or a right, so we can install this any old way. It's how we install the housing into the back plate. That's where we need to be careful. So we pop it through the hole here, and we can see the way the shaft is positioned. There is a zig here allowing it to zag away from the housing. So that's how it's got to be done. And this clevis pin and so forth we can adjust after the fact. The Green Bible calls for graphite grease. The Haynes manual calls for grease. I'm using what I have in the workshop. Okay, now the plungers, doesn't matter which side they go in, but the grooves, those grooves have to be facing the front. Might have got a little overexcited with the grease. Right, although this guy's ready to go in, we're going to have a look at our adjustment plunger housing. We have our little conical cone at the top with a thread. You screw it from the back as it advances through, it pushes your plungers out. The plungers don't so much come as a pair, but they have a left and a right. Okay, so to tell that you have one of each, you butt them up face to face, and those grooves where the brakes sit should be in line. So you know you've got a left and a right, but which one's left and which one's right? Oh, I don't know. Let's get our conical thing, pop it into the housing and screw it down if we can. It's a slippery bugger. Now we need to work out which plunger is left and which is right. So we'll pop them in the hole, the long nose facing the front. Yeah. So they need to be sitting on that face, and these grooves need to be in line. Probably just gave myself a hernia, but it was for a good cause. Now with all that set up, we can install temporarily our brake drum. Put that on there, make sure the adjustment housing is backed off completely. Now I'm going to tighten this up until it's making contact, until there's a bit of tightness there. And then I'm going to back it off 2 notches until we've got free play. That's good. So there could be some fine tuning to go, but that's a good head start. It is time, finally, to install our thing. In it goes. Oh, I bet you never thought that was going to happen. Now I have a brand new washer and an old castellated nut for no other reason than I just forgot to buy a new one. But before we put them on the hubs of this vehicle are felt washers, and on the output shafts for the disco are felt washers. But I couldn't find anywhere in the books that mentioned felt washers for the output shafts of the gearbox on this. Doesn't mean the information's not there, I just couldn't find it. Anyway, I consulted with my friends over in Australia called Seriously Series. They have a channel on a social media platform called YouTube. You might have heard of it. Anyway, they go off on adventures and do a lot of maintenance and upgrades as you would for a Land Rover channel, keen cyclists. So they affirmed the existence of the felt washer in the output shafts. So that is what I'm doing right now, installing. Well, the Green Bible doesn't say anything about torque settings for this castellated nut that I could find, and I really want to use my torque wrench. When there's just this aura of professionalism around a torque wrench. Oh, he's got a torque wrench, he knows what he's doing, he's a professional. So the Haynes manual saved me, 85 foot-pounds for this guy. Oh, that's satisfying. Hey, double click. Don't forget the pin. Front output flange. This one is looking pretty good, though it is towards the end of its life. So I bought a speedy sleeve for it, but that got destroyed in Operation Bungle. Now, while the rear ones are hideously expensive to replace, the front ones not so. In fact, they're only a little bit more expensive than the speedy sleeve I bought for it. Well, if you've done something recently that makes you look and feel a bit of a pillock, you're not alone. Tractor. No? Way back in the very first episode, I introduced my workshop calendar, and the idea was in each preceding episode the calendar was going to be in the video somewhere, sometimes obvious, sometimes not. However, before the second one was even filmed, it dropped down behind somewhere and has been lost forever. However, recently uncovered. There we are. Tractors. Got this in February 2018. And that was just when this project was starting, and that's now February 2022, which is 1 year longer than I thought the project had been running. So I've lost a year of my life. Prop shafts. Let's start with the front. Now the first point of wear in these things are going to be the spider journals or the uni joints, whatever you choose to call them, and you can see in this one an enormous range of movement that shouldn't be there. Now way back in Scorched Earth and the Swivel Balls, part 15, we had to replace the uni joints in the half shafts at the front of the vehicle, but I'd never done it before, so I used this as an experiment, and the uni joint I put in is 5mm less across the yoke than it needs to be, which is not suitable for this vehicle. However, the other point of wear are going to be in the splined sleeves right there. And before we do any measurements at all, you can just sort of see the wide range of movement and slop and even orbital movement as we can swivel it around. So that is a bad sign. The tolerance, maximum tolerance, depending on which book you read, is no more than 0.004 of an inch in movement. So let's put a dial gauge on this and see how we go. Hook it into those splines, turn it on, zero it out, and give it a jostle. Ooh. Well, our outside of tolerance is anywhere between quite a bit and a hell of a lot. It's not good. So I'm going to call this guy Cactus. I'm not even going to reuse him. I'm not going to replace any more uni joints. That is going on probably in the trash. Now we've got the rear prop shaft. Okay, this one feels a little better. Let's put him in the vise. Okay, as we jostle away at this uni joint, there is enough movement everywhere to say that it's no good. You know, it'd probably last another few 100 miles, maybe 1,000, but you'd want to change it. Okay, pull open the splines, and it's a lot firmer than the other guy. A lot less movement, but still some. So this one is definitely going to be in need of the dial gauge check. Better, but still out of tolerance. We're looking at somewhere around anywhere from 0.005 to 0.007, depending on how it feels. Yeah, although this guy failed, he's not too bad. He's not as bad as the other guy. You could almost chuck in some new uni joints and maybe get a few more miles out of it. So this is a low budget operation. However, truth be told, as it's progressed, it's become expensive, but I would like to keep it on the lower end of expensive if I can. Also, this is the first time I've done a project like this, and I cannot guarantee the quality of the work when we get to the end. Well, there will never be an end, let's be honest. Our first objective. So, no matter who does these builds, there's always going to be teething issues, things that need to be sorted out. And that's the way I see it when we get to our first objective, is that this truck's going to be used locally and as a farm truck while I evaluate it and gain confidence in whether or not I'm going to take it further afield and out onto the open highway. Yeah. Now, things like dirty old leaf springs and prop shafts are easily swapped out at a later date once those evaluations have been completed. However, unlike the leaf springs, these guys are fairly cheap at £60 a piece. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to buy 2 new ones. We're done.